Shri Gurubhyo Namaha children, I welcome you all to other new session of your English online class. In today's class, we are going to see a poem from chapter 5 of your class 9 English CBSE book. The poem is The Legend, a Legend of the Northland, written by Phoebe Cary. Okay, let us understand the title before going into the poem, children. A legend means historic story or a story, okay, which was said long ago. A historic story is called as a legend and of Northland. So, we are going to see about a story from the Northland. Northland is generally the areas in the North Pole, okay, or the northern part of the earth. We are not specified with what exact region we are dealing, but it is just specified as Northland. So, this is going to be a story, a historic story of the Northland, and this is written by Phoebe Cary. Let us know about the poet and then get into the poem, children. And before going into the poem, this poem is a ballad. Okay, it is a very new term for all of us. It is a ballad. A ballad is a poem conveying story. A poem which has story in it is called as a ballad, and ballads are usually a long poems with short stanzas. Okay, they have very short stanzas. So, this poem contains, our poem, A Legend of the Northland, contains 16 stanzas with 4 lines, consisting of 4 lines each. Okay, children, I told you a ballad is a poem conveying story, and ballad is a part of a folk culture. Okay, it is passed from one generation to another orally. Okay, it is a story which is conveyed from one generation to another orally. Okay, children, and folk culture means story of the region. Okay, so this is a ballad of Northland. Shall we get started, children? So, let us know about Phoebe Cary. Phoebe Cary was born on 4th September 1824, okay, in United States of America, and she died in 31st July, okay, 1871. And she also has a sister called Alice Cary. Okay, she is also a very famous writer. Let us go into the poem, children. So, we start with the poem. Away, away in the Northland, where the hours of the day are few and the nights are so long in winter that they cannot sleep them through. So, this is how the story, the poem starts, away, away, which means what? So long ago, okay, in Northland. So, it is the story of the past, okay, so long ago in Northland, where the hours of the day are few and the nights are long in winter. So, the winters of the Northland is characterized here. We could see the days are short and the nights are long, which means the hours, the duration of the day is short and the duration of the night is long during the winter season, that they cannot sleep them through. So, it is so long that they are not able to sleep through the nights, which I mean to say, even though they sleep for few hours and wake up, and still it is night, they wake up only with night. Yes, so that is the amount of duration of the night which they experience. So, these are the northern pole of the earth, and it is it is a polar region, very cold region, and imagine the winter, okay, it is going to be so cold there, and the night is also going to be very long. So, this is how we are being characterized with the Northland, where they harness the swift reindeer to the sledges when it snows. So, when it snows, so winter season, obviously there will be snow, and not to tell, it is a polar region, obviously it is going to be icy every part of the year. Okay, so when it snows, what they do? They harness. Who are those they? The people of Northland. So, they are referred here as the people of Northland. So what they do, they harness. Harness means they tie. The swift reindeer. Reindeer is an animal found in the polar region, and the swift reindeer, swift means fast. Okay. So what they do, they tie the reindeer, which are very fast, to the sledges. Sledges are cut. Okay, it is shown here. See, the reindeers are tied to the sledge. Sledge is a vehicle or a cart which is used for transportation. Okay, children. When it snows, and the children look like bear cubs in their funny furry clothes. So this is how the normal day, okay, would be in the Northland. What they do, they tie the swift reindeer, they harness the reindeer to the sledges, and they cover the children, okay, with furry wraps. Okay, because it is very cold and it is obviously the protective cover is needed, right. So what they do, they close or they wrap the children with clothes made of fur. Okay, and the children look like bear cubs. So after closing the children with the furry clothes, the children look like bear cubs. Okay, and they look funny in the furry clothes. So this is how Northland people would be. The children would be covered and they look funny like bear cubs, and the reindeers are tied to the sledges, and the nights are long. So all these things of the Northland are explained in the 2 stanzas. So let us go to the literary devices and the rhyming scheme before hopping on into the 3rd stanza. Shall we, children? First, when we come for the literary devices, it is obviously going to be the rhyme scheme, and I have already taught you how to find the rhyme scheme. Take into account the last word of every line of a stanza. So this is the first stanza. I told you 4 lines of a stanza. This stanza consists of 4 lines. So this is the first stanza. We take into account the last line of, last word of every line. Northland, few, winter, through. Now find out the rhyming pairs. Few and through are the rhyming pairs. So we must give them the same name. Shall we start naming? So the first will be A, few will be B, so through will also be B, and winter is C. Okay, children? So the rhyming scheme of this stanza is A, B, C, B. Okay? So let us now find out the literary devices used in this stanza. So we start with the word away, away. When words are repeated, what is the literary device there? Yeah, repetition. Okay, it is repetition. Repetition is used to lay emphasis. Away, away means what? For a long time. So away, away is a repetition here. Then that, they, them, through is alliteration. What is alliteration, children? You people remember what is alliteration? Words starting with consonant sounds occurring in the same line is called as an alliteration. So here the sound th is repeated. Okay, children? And there is one more poetic device which I taught you also. I hope you should be remembering it. It is enjambment. Okay? The poetic device is enjambment. Enjambment means the idea of one line is conveyed to the next line, or the running lines. Okay? And there won't be any punctuation mark between the first line and the second line. Okay? The idea will be transferred from one line to another. Okay? For clarity purpose, I am just clearing the screen off. So the enjambment here is, and the nights are so long in the winter that they cannot sleep them through. Here you could see this line is continued to the next line also, and there is no punctuation mark separating the 2 lines. Both the lines convey only one idea. So that is called as enjambment. Okay, children? So let us move on to the next stanza. Similarly, we start with the rhyme scheme. Find out the rhyming pairs. Snows and clothes are the rhyming words. Start naming. A, B, C, B. Rhyming words are given, the rhyming pairs are given the same name. So, again it is A, B, C, B. And the next is alliteration. The sound is repeated. So, it is alliteration. Sledges and snows, alliteration. Funny, furry, fur sound is repeated. Sledges and snows, sir sound is repeated. So, all these things come under alliteration. And there is one more poetic device used in this stanza. The children look like bear's cubs. So, this is a simile. What is a simile? Simile is comparison between two things with the use of words like and as. When the words like and as are used to compare between two things, then we call it as simile. And here the children look like bear cubs. The appearance of the children are compared to the appearance of the bear cubs. Okay, that is the simile here. And there is also one more alliteration, look like la sound. Okay, so there are 4 alliteration. Each line is having an alliteration. Here the sledges and snows look like funny, furry. Okay, so all the line is having alliteration. We saw here simile. And can you find out the enjambment here, children? In the second stanza, can you find the enjambment? Yes. See the first and the 2 line, where they harness the swift reindeer to the sledges. So, this is one line, but it is continued to the next line. So, we call it as enjambment. I hope you are noting down all these things in your books. Remember it, children. It is not possible for you to remember everything. So, please make a note, okay, in your book. So, I hope the poetic devices of the first 2 stanzas are clear. Shall we hop on to the next? They tell them a curious story. I don't believe it's true, and yet you may learn a lesson if I tell the tale to you. They tell them a curious story. They refers to the old people or the elderly people of Northland. Okay? And them refers to the youth or the children. Okay, preferably children are more curious in listening to stories. So, it either refers to the children or the youth, okay, of Northland. They tell them a curious story, a very interesting story. I don't believe it's true. So, in the second line we can see the author is giving his idea about the story. He is telling about his view of the story. He thinks it is not true. Okay. The people of the Northland are saying some story to their children which he does not think is true. But still he wishes to say the story to us because he thinks it would be a social obligation for him to create some awareness among the readers. Can you understand, children? He wants us to learn some value from the story, and that is the reason he is sharing the story to us. And yet you may learn a lesson if I tell the tale to you. So, he thinks we would learn a lesson if he is telling the story to us. A tale means the story. Okay, children. Once when the good Saint Peter lived in the world below and walked about it preaching just as he did, you know. So, once. So, this is where the real story of the poem is beginning. So long we have been seeing how the Northland looks or what the people do, what the elderly people do to the children. All these were the general description, okay, which was given. Now the poet is taking us through the story. And all of us know the stories or the tales start with once upon a time, long, long ago. So similarly, you can see the word once used here too. Once when the good Saint Peter. So, once there was a good saint called Saint Peter. Saint Peter was an apostle. apostle of Christ. So his job is to preach about Lord Jesus Christ. So he was, when he was preaching, he lived in the world below and walked about it preaching. Preaching means conveying religious messages to other people is called as preaching. So he would be preaching, he would be traveling, saying and preaching about Christ. So as far as now, let us go into the literary devices and the rhyming scheme of these two stanzas before moving on to the next stanza. And the rhyme scheme, how to find out the rhyme scheme? Now I think you would be familiar with finding out the rhyme scheme, and it's very easy also, right? True U, A, B, C, B, and Peter, below, preaching, no, and it follows A, B, C, B. So all the stanzas are having the same rhyme scheme pattern, A, B, C, B. So let us go into the next poetic device. First is alliteration. Alliteration, here the th sound is repeating. In the third line, yet and you are repeating, and learn and listen, la sound is repeating, and tell and till, t sound is repeating. So all these come under alliteration. And this stanza, there is no such poetic devices. Shall we move on to the next stanza, children? He came to the door of a cottage. He came to the door of a cottage in travelling round the earth, where a little woman was making cakes and baking them on the hearth. And being faint with fasting, for the day was almost done, he asked her from her store of cakes to give him a single one. So he came. So I told you Saint Peter goes around the place preaching. So he comes in front of a cottage, okay, in travelling round the earth, where a little woman was making cakes. So he came to a cottage wherein there was a woman who was baking cakes, and she was baking them on the hearth. Hearth is a fireplace, children. It is a fireplace wherein they cook or bake the cakes. And being faint, so faint here means tired of fasting. He had not been eating, so he was very tired and he was moving around without eating on an empty stomach, and so gradually he was getting very tired. For the day was almost done, which means here all day he had not been eating, so he has come at the end to a cottage, okay, wherein the lady was baking cakes. He asked her from her store of cakes. So this man, Peter, Saint Peter, what he does, he asks the lady for a cake, okay, from her store of cakes. So she had been baking so many cakes. Out of so many cakes, he asked only a cake, one cake, to give him a single one. Okay, let us find out the literary devices used in stanza before going on to the next. So find out the rhyming scheme, children. Cottage, earth, cakes, hearth. So earth and hearth are rhyming. So it is A, B, C, B. So in the next stanza, fasting, done, cakes, one. Done and one are rhyming. So it should be again the same rhyming scheme, A, B, C, B. And the literary devices used in this stanza is again woman, was. Can you find out the literary device used here, children? Them, the. When the consonant sounds are repeating, what do we call them as? Exactly, it is an alliteration. So we have lots of alliteration, lots of enjambment through the poem. Okay, I wish you would be trying to find out before I could teach you, right? So next stanza, faint, fasting is an alliteration, day, done is an alliteration. Okay children, that's all. And there is no enjambment. You can see after every line there is a punctuation mark. So, no enjambment and only alliteration is there in this stanza. Okay children, let us move on to the next stanza. So she made a very little cake, but as it baking lay, she looked at it and thought it seemed too large to give away. So, when this man Saint Peter was asking for a cake, what she did? She started baking one more, and while it was baking, while it was cooking, from the outside she was seeing the hearth, okay, into the cake, and she felt the cake was too big to be given. Okay, it seemed too large to give away. When the cake was baking, you could see it would pop up, it would enlarge, yes or no children? When she saw that, she thought it is too big for her to give it away to somebody. Therefore, she needed another and still a smaller one. So, since she thought it is going to be a big cake to be given, she is kneading. Kneading is making a dough out of a flour. Okay, making a dough from the dry flour is called as kneading. The process is called as kneading. So, she kneads some more flour and she makes a smaller cake, but it looked, when she turned it over, as large as the first had done. So, she made the cake small, but while it was baking, it also seemed too big for her like the first one. Yes children? Let us find out the literary devices used in this stanza and find out the rhyming scheme. Cake, lay, seemed, away. So, lay and away are rhyming. So, B and C. And for this stanza, it is another one over done. One and done are rhyming. So, A, B, C, B. Okay. And one more literary device is still and smaller. The consonant sound S is repeating, which is called as alliteration. Good. Shall we move on to the next stanza? Then she took a tiny scrap of dough and rolled it flat and baked it as thin as a wafer, but she couldn't part with that. So, first two cake attempts were too big for her. So, what she does, she takes one tiny amount of dough. Now, what she is doing, a tiny scrap of dough. Scrap means a very small amount, a tiny amount of dough, and she rolled it flat. Okay, she is rolling into a thin flat sheet. Okay, and baked it thin as a wafer. So, it is not going to be like a cake, she is baking it to the consistency of a wafer, but she couldn't part with that. She doesn't want to give even that is for her, that is too big to be given. Okay, we can understand she is such a greedy and a miser woman. Okay. For she said, my cakes that seem too small when I eat of them myself are yet too large to give away. So, she put them on the shelf. So, after baking the wafer, okay, let us not call it a cake, after baking the wafer, she looks at the wafer and she thinks, why is this when I bake and when I eat, even the largest of the cakes seems smaller, when I give it away, even the smaller cake seems larger. What is the magic in this? Why is that I am not able to part with even the tiny scrap of the cake? So, she thinks, why is it? My cake seems small when I eat them and too large to give away. Okay, she is not able to part with even the tiny scrap of the cake. So, let us now find out the literary devices and the rhyming scheme of these two stanzas. I hope you would be able to find it now. Dough, flat, wafer, that. Flat and that are rhyming. So, A, B, C, B. And small, myself, away, shelf. Again the same pattern, A, B, C, B is the rhyming scheme. So, the next is alliteration. Can you find the alliteration in these two stanzas, children? Tiny, took tiny, and she shelf. The consonant sound sh is repeated. Okay. One more literary device is rolled and rolled. It is repeated, so it is repetition. Rolled and rolled to lay emphasis that she is making into a very thin flat sheet of cake, and baked it thin as wafer. And this thin as wafer is a simile. So how is she kneading? How is she rolling the cake? She is kneading it she is rolling it as thin as a wafer. When comparison is made using the word as or like is called as simile. Here she is rolling the cake as a wafer. Okay, children. So these are the literary devices used in this stanza. I hope you would have enjoyed this part of the poem. We will continue the other part, the remaining stanzas, in the next session. Thank you, children.